very, very lengthy months that lie ahead before May the 7th.
Now, Douglas Carswell, you will no doubt join those voices that ask the question, why wasn't immigration on that list? But need it be if it is part of all those other subjects?
I would turn that around. It's quite extraordinary. David Cameron spent much of the past year promising that he got the message on immigration, promising action. Now he's published a list of 6 priorities. It doesn't even make his top to-do list. It's an extraordinary omission. I would argue it's very difficult to talk about many of the issues on that list without also addressing the subject of immigration. Now, David Cameron is trying to frame the choice in the election as one between control and recovery versus chaos. If we can't control our borders, then how on earth can he say that he's got to grips with many of the other problems the country
What do you say to that, Andrew Mitchell?
Douglas has just made exactly the point, that it is impossible to discuss these 6 subjects without discussing immigration.
You can't talk about jobs and wages without addressing the fact
precisely,
that
and therefore
400 million people have a legal right to settle here. That has to be addressed, and it's not being addressed by David Cameron. He's running scared.
No, but you've made the point, Douglas, precisely the point, that you cannot discuss these 6 priorities that the Prime Minister has set out this morning without discussing immigration.
So immigration will be discussed heavily during the election. Why wasn't it on his list today?
Well, I think I've explained that on his list of 6 very important areas, immigration is affected by all of them and will be part of the debate on all of them as well.
I mean, Douglas Carswell, it's easy, one might say, for you and UKIP to say the Tories haven't mentioned it because they don't want to discuss immigration, because in some ways people will argue it's the only policy that much of the electorate associates you with, immigration and leaving the EU.
I would say, on the contrary, David Cameron talked very sensibly about the need to reduce
but I'm
deficit.
asking about UKIP's association with only 1 or 2 policies.
Well, I think UKIP in many parts of the country is associated with far more than simply just those macro issues. If you listen to what David Cameron said about deficit reduction, I totally agree. That's why we would go further, and we would reduce the deficit even faster by reducing the amount of overseas aid by £9 billion a year. That's something that he hasn't even contemplated.
But John, is it a subject?
All 3 of the establishment parties will talk about immigration but fail to address the fundamental fact. Until we address the fact that 400 million people in the EU have a legal right to come here, we cannot control our borders. Everything else is blah, blah.
Right. I mean, using those numbers, of course, as you know, that would mean every single person being able to come here in those instances.
I choose my words very carefully.
And there's a contrary argument.
60 million people in Britain have a legal right to go there, but they're not about to go there.
I think we need to end the automatic right of 400 million people to come and live here.
Let's
have an election on that basis.
Douglas, would that also stop us being able to work abroad if we want to?
All right, Andrew Mitchell.
Yes, I mean, it's going to be an extremely long...
There's an upturn, as Labour have said, halfway through.
Well, let me put that question to you, Douglas Carswell, because, as you know, Nigel Farage has been accused of wanting to look at a social insurance policy to fund the NHS. He's denied that, he's rejected it, wanting to keep it free at the point of use. But do you and does UKIP sign up to Simon Stevens, who's running the NHS, figures for spending £8 billion more by 2020?
I think we are going to have to spend more. We are going to have to spend more as a society for the simple reason that people are living longer. Technology means that we can spend more and invest more in health. We're going to have to do it.
Right. So you would increase spending. Would you ring-fence and protect spending in the NHS, UKIP?
Well, we will publish a budget, but I think we're going to have to increase spending because the fact is that people are living longer, people expect better healthcare, and they're not getting it. And they're going to have, I think, more of our resources as a country spent on healthcare.
Was it right, is it right for Labour to, let's use that term, weaponise the NHS, make it such a political football because you think and regard it as your issue?
It is a critically important issue for the country. It's the biggest single symbol of what sort of society we are.
Was that the language you would have used?
We all pay in, and it's there when we need it. I must admit, slightly sceptical about the sudden turn of many UKIP's leading lights towards support for the NHS. But let me just say this, the bigger issue here is that the NHS is in the situation it is at the moment, partly because of increased demand, more elderly people, more serious state of health, but partly because of a disastrous reorganisation that not only wasted a lot of money, threw things into chaos, and secondly, an insistence that the privatisation of many services is at the heart of the way the NHS should go in the future. And we will put the NHS at the centre, not least because we have shown where additional money comes from through a mansion tax. We have made it clear how we want to bring health service and and social services spending together to help elderly people in particular. We've made clear what needs to be done about the reorganisation. So we will talk about this because I think only the Labour Party can actually secure the future of the NHS.
Well, right, very briefly, I want to mention very quickly the deficit.
As a Conservative backbencher, I got it wrong when I supported the reorganisation. I recognise that. I changed parties. I fought a by-election promising to create NHS reform that did away with this overly complicated system that is directly responsible for many of the problems we face this winter.
You joined a party whose leader had been advocating for ages the privatisation.
We are
pro-NHS. He's suddenly changed.
We're passionately pro-NHS.
You were talking about
can voters trust you on that?
Absolutely.
You were talking
Absolutely.
about, you were attacking Andrew for talking to focus groups earlier on. UKIP have talked to focus groups of voters, and you've done a flip on the NHS.
So, Douglas, are you still going to charge people to visit the GPs, which has been party policy for some
That is not
time?
party policy. It's never been party policy, and it never will be.
Has been.
Stop the smears and the jeers.
Okay,
UKIP is pro-NHS.